Good morning. Hello, everyone. This is the second master class on active listening. We are here today with the lovely Vicki Helm and Dee Dee, both from Colorado. I am hanging out in Philadelphia. Got me thinking
Mhm.
about Philly, Vicki, in Florida, where it is 70 some degrees. So I won't rub that into you Coloradians.
Yeah, we are definitely in snow.
But we are going to start the second part of our three-part active listening uh, series. And the primary purpose of this series is to determine the difference between hearing and listening. And today, what we're going to do is focus on those nonverbal cues. 7% of the communication are the words that we say, which leaves the other 93% to be tone, breathing, body language, expressions on our face, which is quite significant. So, we're going to do a couple of exercises and see what we think of those because in any communication, you've got the literal, what's being said. Then we have the emotional subtext. And are you emotional underneath it? Then you've got the stacking of the nonverbal stuff. So you've got that on top of it. And finally, most people speak out of either fear, desire, or need. So you need to figure out in a conversation, if you're confused, which of those three are they communicating from? So, with that in mind, we are going to start with showing some photos of some conversations. And we're going to talk about what we've got going on here in the conversations, in your opinion, and we can share them together. So, Dee Dee, I'm going to ask you to be my voice. When I share here, I'm going to lose you and not be able to see what's going on. So you'll have to tell me that you can see and it's all good and all that good stuff. So we've got the entire screen. All right, and I'm going to minimize you beauties. And I'm going to come here.
We can see your screen.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the first thing that we see here are a young man and young lady checking each other out. So what do those faces tell you? Just jump in since I can't see you.
Well, she seems delighted, and he seems a little questioning.
Yeah, it looks a little flirtatious, maybe.
That's what I got. I was there
Or
flirting.
potentially flirtatious. Potentially flirtatious. He still has that, are you welcoming me in look?
Guys have it rough, they never get to read our signals properly. What about this one?
Complete conversation. They both look very interested.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a bit her body language is like she's a bit pulled back, and I can't tell if that's because she
I
wants
agree.
to get a better look at him while they're discussing things, or if he is overbearing. He doesn't look that way to me. He looks like they're having a good conversation.
I do feel he's like talking about something he needs because he looks like he's counting something off or giving a list of events. So that was the only thing, usually you do this when I'm saying, well, one, I need to go to the doctor. Two, I've got to get my laundry done. So that's the only thing, but I agree with Vicky's statement.
Very good. And Vicki, that's a good catch that she's leaning backwards.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's
And
kind of turned like I don't know if she's moving away or from the conversation or adjusting so she has a better view of him.
exactly, that's a tough call.
Mhm.
Okay. the next one. What do we have these
Mm.
three people doing?
Um, I'm gonna be honest, for me, he looks arrogant and, um, the one gal looks bored and, "Oh, he's doing it again." The other woman on the right looks, um, just a hint defended to me, and
Mhm.
the guy across the table looks like he's taking advantage of that, and the girl in the middle looks like she's noticing him doing the same crap he's done before. She's like, "Oh god, what are we gonna do?" That's what I get.
No, that's a good take. Very good. Dee Dee, do you have anything else to offer?
Well, I noticed both of them have, like reports or things in their hand. What
Mhm.
I see is him being engaging with her, the one across from him, and that those two are very into the conversation. And the third woman is looking at him like he's braggadocious or like she's not really listening.
Mansplaining.
It could be that she's just in a bad viewpoint and she's tired. She's just kind of like not being careful with your body language.
Exactly. So you have two different perspectives on this,
Yeah,
and that shows the significance of body language. Now, obviously, if we could hear the words they were saying, that would give us a better
yeah.
indication and the tone they're using. But that's why it's so important to understand what body language is going on here in a context.
It's interesting because I read body language before anything else. Like, I trust that more than the words they're saying or anything else. And what I'm wondering is, in cases like this, when you can't hear the words or where you're making an evaluation and maybe you don't have all of the details, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how do you know when you're actually reading the situation right or making judgments? Because people make judgments out of
Mm-hmm.
situations like that are baseless and way off point. And I realize that I could be way off point by what I'm seeing in this, just making a judgment in my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where the rest of the picture is really important. When we hear the words that are being said, the tone that's being said, is there any unusual breathing? That should clarify for you. But
Mhm.
sometimes, and this happens a lot, unfortunately, because people aren't reading body language or they aren't reading body language correctly,
Yeah.
where they have one impression of what the conversation was, and the person to whom they're speaking has a completely different impression.
Yeah.
So that's why understanding this to the best of our ability is really critical. Whoops.
Thank you.
Next one. A little fuzzy. But I do want to talk about this one for a minute. Can you give me your opinions on this one?
She's
Total
twisting
first
her
date.
hair.
Yeah. Total first date flirtiness.
Yeah,
They like
she's
each other.
twisting her hair.
Yeah, just playing with her hair. That's a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. The hair is an important one. What about this guy? Not talking, he's talking to you. He's not talking, you don't see him talking to anybody else. So what kind of mood is this guy in?
I've got my cup of Joe and I'm happy.
Exactly.
I think he's trying to be seductive with his eyes. I think he's possibly trans and having a cup of coffee, but he's trying to be flirty with his eyes and his smile. He he does look happy, it's true, but he also looks kind of seductive in a way, like he's trying to pull you in with his eyes.
Okay, good observation. I did not see that. I obviously don't recognize what looks guys have.
Mhm.
Me neither. I just thought
Well,
if he's
if you
looking at
ask
me,
me, this is not a straight man. He's not straight. He's either bisexual or trans or something. He's very effeminate to me.
hmm,
Yes, now that I do see.
I didn't see that. I just saw someone who's in a coffee shop who's, has their coffee. They recognized me and gave me a hello, good morning, because if I'm the person they're talking to, I know I'm way too old to be with that guy. He's not flirting with me, you
To
know.
me, this is a very common, I'm gonna just use the term gay look, and we call this the "I know that we know that nobody else knows." That's what those eyes are to me, and I've seen them so many times before, and it's the, "Hey, girlfriend," kind of look to me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, my
hope so.
gaydar was sort of out on this one too.
I don't
Mhm.
have any gaydar. I have a
I
big A.
know.
He's right. I mean, I wish I was better, but I don't know why I wish I was better. So I guess it's no big deal. But I have
Yep,
no
no big
gaydar
deal.
whatsoever.
Well,
Yeah.
I've dated two gay men and married one of them, so my gaydar
Ugh.
wasn't always as good as it is. Okay, the next one. So, what's this little girl thinking?
That's her having her rebellious moment. "I don't wanna listen to you. I'm disconnected from you. I'm hearing you, but I don't want to hear you." She's checked out. It's her way of being rebellious is to check out and be like, "I'm not listening to you," even though she is actually listening. That's
Mhm.
that she is actually listening. She could not produce that face with that intention unless she was actually listening to the conversation, but she's not
Mhm.
listening in a way that she's listening with some surliness, I guess, to her or to the parent, whoever that authority figure is,
Mhm.
with a bit of
Dee Dee?
rebelliousness. This is a weirdly
Um,
fun
I
game.
I am going to preface it as this. Um, her arms are folded. She's closed off.
Mhm.
She's looking away. She looks like she wants to say something to me, that there's something she wants to express and she doesn't feel confident in expressing it. So she's taken the choice to not communicate because she knows it's not going to be received. That's what I see.
Very good. Very good. Well,
And I
those
mean,
are
the only reason you can say that is because this finger is pointing at her in a judgmental way. So, that
Perhaps.
finger has a lot to do with the context. If I saw her just sitting there without the finger and I just blanked out the finger, she's closed off and she could have been contemplating or remembering or something. But that finger has a lot to do with the communication in the context of the picture.
an excellent point. Yes, the folded arms closed off, looking away, not just looking straight ahead so that she can't see them, but she's got her eyeballs as far to the right as possible. The only way that she could do this differently was put her fingers in her ears and say la 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 la. Not,
Yes.
not interested. Okay. What about this guy and gal? Dee Dee, why don't you start?
It looks like they're having an argument, but not a violent argument or an aggressive argument. Um, and by their clothing and their ethnicity and so on, you can't tell whether it's a couple The white cloak makes me think he's some kind of professional or something like that. But then I realize that's a common shirt for certain cultures. So I don't know if they're a couple arguing, work colleagues, but they're arguing. They're not arguing in a mean way. That seems like they're trying to work out the best approach to a difficult situation.
You
Okay.
know, for me, it looks like he's trying to get clarity, like he's asking a clarifying question, like, "Do you mean this?" And it looks like she is trying to give him more clarity because her hands are, I don't see any aggression in either person.
Neither do I.
They're trying to figure something out, and I actually think it looks cooperative to me.
Some of the things that I noticed on this were that he's got his brows scrunched together.
Mhm.
So there's something either um, angry, not violent, but angry or inquisitive.
Inquisitive, yeah.
And it's tough to tell. I mean, if we blocked everything out except the guy's face without the finger, there
Mhm.
could be something that's more inquisitive there.
Mhm.
The finger, an important part of the body language, is significant. Now,
Mhm.
again, we can't hear the words, we don't know the context,
Yeah.
but when you're pointing at somebody like that, that strikes me as an aggressive move. And her hands are up, not like she's going to get hit or anything like that, but that she's
Mhm.
trying to calm the situation down and explain what's going on.
Mhm.
So this is the best example where we've got
3 opinions.
three different opinions on the same scenario.
Yeah.
Now, again, if we heard the words, if we heard the
Mhm.
tone, it would give us clarity. But this is the last picture because I wanted to emphasize the fact that there are certain cues that you can look at, but they can be interpreted in different ways. So if we
Yeah.
were watching this conversation across a coffee shop, it would be tough to determine, in my opinion, what's going on because it could be either one of what you said. But I do think that she's, with her hands up, she's trying to explain
Yeah.
something. So let me come back to you all. There you are. Thank you.
So again, I wanna ask the question because this is really enlightening for me. It's like when we listen, we don't listen with our eyes, we don't listen with our mind. We have all like a full body experience of listening. We're doing all these things at the same time, trying to gather information to create meaning or perception out of what we're seeing or doing. And I want to add, like on that last photo where he was pointing like this, etc., and we all had different views of that. How much does now from that point trauma affect what you see when you're perceiving so that you don't actually see what's really happening? You're seeing what happened in your past. Do you understand what I'm asking?
I absolutely do, and that's a fantastic question. And first, I want to acknowledge the first thing you said, because listening is a full body experience. You feel things in your skin, in your heart, when you approach a different situation. You hear, you see. Your brain is telling you messages that they aren't saying. So that's hugely important. But you're right about the filters. And that
Mhm.
is an area where uh, people really need to be working on their life. I mean, if you've had a traumatic background, it absolutely is a filter for every aspect of your life. And so listening is yet another good reason to take care of yourself and address that to get yourself balanced, because you're
Mhm.
absolutely going to look at a situation or react. If it's that gentleman was pointing a finger at you, even if he was saying, and I love you, that's how it is.
Yeah.
Still, that finger coming at you
Yeah.
can be a flag.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, um, so you're absolutely right about the filters that we view things through.
So, one of the things, like becoming a great communicator or at least acting like a great communicator, one of the things that is important for me is to make sure that I am reading the moment correctly. And I certainly don't bat 1,000 at that, and I don't know anybody that does, but I would like to have a pretty high batting average where, um, I'm not judging, I'm assessing and evaluating, not judging, so that I can communicate with whomever I'm communicating with better. And I was wondering, since we went through those pictures, I realized because we all had different opinions, it raised a red flag for me. Maybe you're not seeing what is actually there. Maybe you're seeing a perception of something that is all from the past. And I was wondering, is there something we can practice, something we can do, some tip that we could have to help us be able to clarify, communicate better, or do something? Because that really threw me off. I mean, I looked at all those and I was like, huh, they don't see what I'm seeing.
Mhm.
And that's probably every conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. One of the things that is a benefit to us is that of that 93%, I said that 7% are the words, 93% are something else. 7% are words, 55% is tone, and the remaining 30 some percent is body and breathing. So the good news is that the tone gives you a lot to help clarify the situation as opposed to a static photo.
That's
But
true.
in terms of an exercise, it really becomes a matter of asking the right questions. And that's one of the things that we talked about last week, and we're going to talk about again this week. What curiosity questions should you be asking to clarify? And
Yeah.
that's to clarify the message as well as the intention and the tone. Yes, Dee Dee.
It's interesting because we all have our experience in life that we're bringing with us at any moment that we are communicating. And in that, we can only count that our experiences match the moment. There was one time in Germany where I had cut my finger before I went to my aunt's dinner party. And I got there and she said, "What's that on your finger?" I said, "Oh, that's a band aid." And everybody saw me do this because she said, "Well, what's underneath?" So I started to take off the band aid and show her how I had cut myself cooking and how bad it was. And she was like, "Oh," and all people saw was this. And this huge crowd of Germans came running over, screaming at me that you never use that finger at people, and blah, 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 and what are you doing? And how could you insult an aunt on her birthday like that? And it just went around the family. Somebody had picked up um, a wrong judgment and used it to smear my name. And they were
Yep.
smirking the whole time like, "Oh, I got you now. You did a German no-no." And I went through the rest of my time with Hartmut's family being treated like a pariah because her aunt asked me what happened to my finger. And she
Uh,
never came to my defense. So communication and experience, it was the smirk on her face that let me know it wasn't, it was kind of like,
mhm.
"We caught you."
Yeah.
and and I'm not sure if she really believed it, but there wasn't an openness to talk about it. But I've seen where people really take it, give you the worst possible light because either they don't like you, they feel intimidated by you, or something else, and then they use it in a horrible way.
You brought up an excellent point, Dee Dee, and I'm sorry that happened to you because
Me
that's
too.
horrible.
Yeah.
But culturally, and
Mhm.
not just internationally, but even in the US or within countries, there are
Mhm.
cultural differences. There are
Mhm.
some cultures that when they talk to you, they don't look in your eyes.
That's
Yes.
true.
Well, for us, that would seem that they're being
Right.
evasive,
Mhm.
they're hiding something, whatever. Others cultures, they stare at you like you've got three heads, which would make most of us uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But culturally, that's what makes the most sense.
Mhm.
Do you talk with your hands a lot? Are you
Mhm.
Italian? Um, are you Italian? Are you Jewish? You talk with your hands a lot.
Or do
Um,
you use a lot of emotion in when you communicate? You know?
exactly, exactly. So someone seeing a conversation across a piazza may say,
Yes.
oh, they could be having an argument, when in actuality, they're just talking about something that they're excited about or they're passionate about. So it's really important to consider the cultural context as well. And unfortunately, that bit you in the buns.
You
And
know, that's
go ahead.
that's so interesting because we're talking about a perception that, bit her in the buns, etc. And sometimes people create those perceptions to mislead or manipulate or whatever they want to do. And part of being a great communicator is like noticing, just noticing. And sometimes um when I see where we're talking about a pain or a perception or whatever, I also see that um the filters that could be created are from past, like, I have a very dear friend who went through something like Dee Dee went through, and it has damaged a huge portion of her life. It's just this big trauma, and she was probably a little younger, not married, in other words, when these traumas come in, and then they affect the filter that you have. And my question is, in order to become a a great communicator, is it important to tell the difference between us, like, as part of being a good communicator, knowing your own traumas or being super honest? Because I know that there are dishonest people who are very good at communicating, they'll take advantage of a situation or someone, or manipulate someone, um, because they are a good communicator and maybe you're not, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yes,
you know what I mean? I got an opportunity to sit down and say, "These are the stumbling blocks to being a good communicator for me."
hmm
And I wanna make sure that I'm perceiving correctly, not being judgmental, asking permission to have more information from that person. And when my red flag goes up, and it goes up, I trust it at the same time. Like, I don't trust this dude, even with the smooth talker that they may be.
exactly. It's important, and I won't say it's the most important piece of the nonverbal communication, but in some scenarios it is. And that is what your gut's telling you.
Yeah.
When the flags are going off, then all bets are off. Then you don't necessarily trust what you see or what you hear, you just know that something is wrong.
Yes, you get a sense of something's wrong.
And if you have and Dee Dee, if I could just finish my thought, then I'll jump in or ask you.
Please.
Um, you brought up an interesting question, Vicki, about if you know your trauma. If you are able to, and that's where I was talking earlier about going back and working on yourself, knowing that you have an issue and you need to make yourself whole for your own well-being. But if you have that awareness, then stopping yourself before you jump to conclusions is important, because making assumptions and conclusions is one of the many problems that come out of not listening with your whole body. You make an assumption about something, and either, for example, last night I was on the happy hour call and I was dead tired, and my comments were sort of monotone. There was heart in them, but I could hear my tone here. So my intention, people could listen to that and think, well, she's disinterested. But in reality, I was just beat. So having to, sometimes knowing the context, your own context and the other person's context. You may have a person who doesn't look in your eyes a lot. They look down, and that is because they are beaten, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, psychological. They don't have the confidence in themselves to look you in the eye. And that can
Yeah.
be concerning for somebody to wonder, well, what are they hiding? When in truth, they're not hiding anything at all. So you need to look at the whole picture, and where possible, when you're not talking to a stranger, know the context, their context, not the conversation's context, but their context. Now, Dee Dee, could I finish with Dee Dee? Dee Dee, if you remember, because I talked longer than I expected, do you remember what you were going to talk about?
Yeah, I remember my question. I wrote it down.
Smart lady, we talked about that last week. Very good.
um, eh, the best way to handle manipulation, if I get an instinct someone's manipulating me in a conversation or a situation, engaging it doesn't seem like to be the best. you know if someone's going fishing and I'm not even there with a pole, I can't engage in that kind of sport with them. So,
Mhm.
either I've got to have my fishing pole, my hook, and my worm, or I got to go away. So, what are my choices when I'm dealing with someone who's interpreting or manipulating the conversation to present a persona that they want?
The way that I would handle it, and obviously if it's an aggressive manipulation, you're right, you walk away.
Mhm.
But I would approach that with questions. The important thing is staying neutral, not matching their whatever, just you
Okay.
being neutral and asking questions like, well, tell me more about that. Or what part of this matters to you the most?
Mhm.
What would you like me to do? So by asking questions, you are engaging the other person, whether they're manipulating you or not. But if they're manipulating you, they're realizing that you're a smart cookie. You're not falling into what they expect you to say.
Yes.
They're just you're throwing it back at them, but you're throwing it back calmly with questions that make them stop. It's called a pattern interrupt. They have a
Uh-huh.
pattern that they work through. and you interrupt their pattern by interrupting them if necessary, although interrupting is never ideal. But if you need to interrupt them and say, well, tell me what you'd like me to do about that. Or what part of that matters the most to you? Because that will get them off their game. They have a pattern that they follow, and normally their mark follows.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't follow that and
Mm-hmm.
you engage back to them, I think that would be a very effective way to handle it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll let Vicky. I had one more, but I didn't write it down, so I don't remember now.
Okay,
Thank
Vic,
you.
what was yours?
Oh, I want to go back to the conversation we were having previously and wanted to share something with you that this is why I think I practice communicating more than anything. It is the one thing that I sit with myself for my inner work and really, what is my mind saying? When I speak, when I've write books, when I'm on stage and I'm out there, I know that an entire group of people, whether it's 10, 20, 100, 40,000, I think 39,000 is the largest group I've ever talked to there. Everybody and their energy field is literally scanning me. It's just scanning. And you can feel that type of scanning happen where people are reading you and trying to figure out who you are. And one of the ways that I know that they scan is they scan by your languaging, how you present a sentence or a thought or something else. And every time you level up, you mostly level up in influence and credibility, anything else, it is mostly about how you communicate. And that every single time, it doesn't matter whether they've seen you 1,000 times, they want and are testing the aha moment that you're bringing. You either have the aha moment or you don't. And I call that being on. You have to be on all the time. And there's a point where you can't be on with your mind all the time. It doesn't work. There's a point where your communication has to be authentic and it has to be you. And it has to be you that's showing up, warts and all, everything else that's there. And at the same time, um, not necessarily hiding, I don't know how to say it, not necessarily hiding under the ability to be professional when you talk, but the ability to be the real you when you talk. And that can always, I think, shift and improve. And the difference between a 4-figure speaker and a 7-figure speaker is that one skill set that we're just talking about, the ability to read the room correctly outside of your, you know, injuries and your wounding. People are listening for how you say something. Is there an uplifting ending or a down ending? There's all of those things that are in there. And I just realized by being on this call with you that the biggest creator of wealth isn't your product. It isn't, you can't develop an audience until you develop the skill that you're actually telling us, that you're showing us. And I haven't figured that out, Karen, because I haven't had a speaking course. I haven't had any of those things. I just do what I do. And I realize right now that everybody in elementary school or wherever you are in your career, if you want more money, the money isn't in the skill set that is, well, here's AI. If you can't talk about AI correctly, if you can't communicate your message or whatever it is, there is no money without that thing. And I
Mhm.
just realized if somebody said, "What is your secret to success?" I just realized it's improving my communication skills every single day, every day as a
Mhm.
practice.
I think that's an excellent observation, Vicki, and I agree with you 100%. One of the things that I think is so true is you can be some hillbilly somewhere who doesn't speak English like most people do, but if they're authentic, then you're more willing to buy from them than some smooth talker who's not being authentic. So, knowing how to communicate authentically as yourself, not as someone else, not as how you think you need to be. Because if you walk into some posh party and you feel like, well, I'm going to speak a little different, I'm going to articulate my words in a little English and all of that kind of stuff, somebody's going to catch you, and it's going to be embarrassing, and they're going to not you're not going to have the same level of credibility. And where these things come in most significantly in these days, although on stage is a huge one, but online.
Mhm.
We're online, we're three talking heads. We can hear words, we can hear tones. We can't see all of the body language.
True.
Now, if we're talking and I'm doing this while someone's talking, your thought is, well, she's not paying attention. What's she doing?
Disinterest.
When people pretend like they're not on their phone,
Mhm.
but they're looking down constantly, you know, body language can give you away in a big way. And it's tough to stay engaged online for a long period of time.
It is. There has to be a level of entertainment almost before somebody's fully engaged.
Exactly. Exactly. You've got to keep it coming, because otherwise it's easy for your mind to drift. And that's when you can ruin your credibility by staring off at the distance, getting on the phone, checking your messages, doing things that people can see, but they don't know all the details. Maybe you have an emergency text that you have to deal with. They
Mhm.
don't know that. All they know is that you're obviously on your phone.
Mhm.
Um, if you're staring off for a short period of time, you might be trying to think of a point that you want to bring back.
Mhm.
Um, so it really is critical that you be authentic and that you be aware of yourself the entire time you're communicating, which is most of your life, most of your day, being on, and particularly online, being on, because you can really cause a problem with your credibility if you don't.
Yeah, and very easily and unintentionally. I
Absolutely.
think that's such a good point that you've made, and I'm having all these realizations by being on this master class. Like I have 30 years in the industry, and never once have I looked at what are the things that are affecting the results I have. What are the
Mhm.
things that have? What are the top, like say, top 5 skill sets that make you 7 figures? And right at the top is the ability to communicate your message to an audience. That's what everybody talks about.
Yep.
If you don't have that in a way that feels authentic, looks authentic, that isn't filled with your traumas or a trauma conversation, because people expect that if you're more awakened or you're more intelligent, that how your the words you use, your vocabulary, everything has to feel to them, to the receiving person. It has to feel uplifted. It has to let them know on a really deep level that they're sensing your realness. And you're right, that's really hard to do online because you don't it's way easy to do on stage. An
Yes,
stage audience is instant feedback, and an online audience, you always have to research or send out a a questionnaire or something. Did you receive? Was it good? Blah, 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 because you can't really read what's happening with only this face up there. Or
exactly.
or if you're doing a webinar, there's sometimes nobody to see. It's like when you said you shared screen with us earlier and you put the picture up and you were like, "Edie, tell me if you can see the picture because I can't see you when that's up." So you've lost the ability to read your audience
Yes,
or you've lost your ability. And I think those communication skills are going to be the next big thing that people are going to need in order to take their message to the next level or understand their message. It's like the amount of contact we have right now with people has a lot to do with Zoom versus live events.
exactly. And connection. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the key word. You need to listening is creating a connection.
Mhm.
Speaking to some degree, but listening is where the real connection comes in because you're the one who's doing all the work. You're the one who's reading the person, who's doing the whole listening with your body,
Yeah.
watching it all, feeling it all. So that connection is much easier. And you're right, on stage, it's awesome because you don't just have one person's feedback, you have hundreds of people
And
giving.
nobody leaves. It's very
Exactly.
rare that the audience will leave. On Zoom, they're like, "Bye, bye, 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 bye." If you're not hitting it right away, they leave. Sorry I
Absolutely.
interrupted you.
Yep. No, no, not at all. Dee Dee, what did you have to say?
I was thinking about I had a nephew, Dustin Forrest Yeager. When he was young, he was ADD, and he would be playing football, fidgeting, and I'd be judging him as not listening, and I knew I was judging him as non-listening, and I'd say, Dustin, do you hear what I'm saying? You need to clean your room and you need to blah. And he says, yeah. And then he would repeat back everything I said. It was like some people, their attention functions better when they have some body
Okay.
activity. And it's been proven in Tibetan Buddhism when we're memorizing texts, they have us walk around because body has a way of inducing memory and they seem to know it. They need that movement
Yeah.
to calm something down or something. When we're dealing with, how do we, I mean, it's kind of like people who have those mental differences than us, whether they're autistic. We can understand Rain Man and see, his daily things. You think he's not dumb. And then you ask him a question and he comes across with this brilliance that is beyond our comprehension.
Yes.
And how do we examine our communication in respects to that kind of difference?
Well,
Because it
I
seems like
look
more
at
and
that.
more the kids are growing up with phones and screens and TVs and parents and so on, that they're multitasking all the time and their
Yes,
brains are moving at a different speed. So their communication is changing. Our communications due to technology is changing, and parents can't keep up with their kids that way.
that's very true. And it goes back to the cultural thing.
Okay,
Um,
so culture.
it's and whether the culture is you have someone who's got some type of a disability.
Yeah.
Yes. But you've got someone with a disability. But I've got to ask, I'll answer that in a minute. Vicky's laughing and I have to know why.
Well, it reminds Edie's story. It reminded me of a story about when Robin's son was about 17 years old, and we were talking, and we were talking at the table, and he finally was so frustrated talking to me. He's like, "Oh my God, you talk so slowly." And I realized that I was thinking back, his conversations are faster. They speak at about this kind of level. This is kind of why we do this now on podcasts, because this is about the speed they do that. But what I realized when Edie was talking, I was like, oh my gosh, Dee Dee, it's a great observation that you see that there is a speed difference, but their multitasking skills are better than ours because we were not taught multitasking until we were in our 40s, at 30s, 40s. They came in multitasking, and I bet their neuroplasticity in their brains have been designed to be able, and it's frustrating for them to talk to us
And
because
then have
they're
to look
like,
at us
they
in
do
the
this. They're like, I'm listening.
Mhm.
And
And
I
they
can't
are.
stand that. I
and
know
they are.
they are, we're not. And I think that's a very interesting distinction because these, Gen Z and some Gen X and everything else, they're like, no, no, keep talking. I can listen. I can listen and hear you. And I'm like, no, you can't. But that's the difference between their brain's modification at birth. They learn this thing and we didn't. And I think it frustrates them that they don't see that they can do two things at once and listen,
Mhm.
have three conversations at the same time on that mobile phone. Because I saw these kids when they were growing up. They had, "Well, mom, wait, I'm having 3 conversations here and one with you at the dinner table," and holy smokes, we don't have that skill. But isn't it an interesting thought? Because 'cause we're looking at communication skills. It's an interesting thought between what you're doing here and how you're observed in generational context as far as communication. Because if you're with like 3 of your peer group friends and you're in Gen Z, you're talking to them, texting over here, and doing this as a natural habit. It
Yeah.
would confuse me, and I don't like doing it. And I'm with you, Karen. I wanna put my presence with an audience or a person, or in fact, I'm finding this conversation, like, so interesting. I'm really riveted by the conversations and the observations that we just made today of everything and how there's differences in generations in communication and speed and dialect and presence and tone and everything else. And I'm like, you know, I'm not sure that the skill set I have right now would be good for somebody who's starting a speaking career now. Would it would be good, or what do I need to learn that's new? And what just right now, Karen, I mean, this whole masterclass, just right now, being able to see the difference in communication, like all those pictures you showed us, what if they had kids there and what would they see? But it
Precise.
just cracked me up for a moment. It cracked me up because I was like, I could see his face. "Oh my god, just say it. You talk so slow." And he
Well,
was so
yeah.
frustrated, and I think he was, like, 16.
Mhm. Yeah,
Well,
and
the
teachers.
question for me arises is even though they're multitasking, what percentage of real understanding and what interpretation is coming over because they're missing part of the communication. No matter what, you cannot really do three things at once. You're kind of jumping, and there are blank spaces. If you watch, just looking between the screen and my coffee, there's a blank moment. It's really just black in your mind. And it's like face, blank, coffee, blank, face, and if you catch your mind, you actually see those blank moments. And they can do a lot more and they can hear, but how much listening are they really accomplishing is
That's a
another
good
question for
question.
me.
That's a good question. What do you think? Do you think that the multitasking is what's your opinion, Karen?
Again, it's a cultural thing that we need to be aware of it, because the truth is they aren't listening. They can repeat back to you. They will parrot what you said. Yes, I know I'm supposed to clean my room,
Mhm,
but they're not getting the body language.
mhm,
Ada will be doing her thing and she's got her virtual reality headset on and she's texting somebody else and talking to somebody on virtual reality while she's playing the game. And then I come in and she stops. I say, I need a minute. No, that's okay. Talk to me. Well, she can hear my words. And if she says, Mom, are you okay? I might say, I'm fine. Now, if I said it that way, someone who's across the table from me knows, yeah, Karen's not quite fine. With Ada, well, Mom said she was fine, so okay. They don't get it. They're missing that 93% or a portion of that 93%. The other
mhm.
thing, and we talked about this number last week, that the average person speaks between 125 and 150 words a minute. The brain processes between 600 and 800 words a minute. So, just in your average conversation amongst adults, there's still a lag, which is part of the reason that people interrupt and part of the reason that people drift. With the kids, and I have no research on this, so I can't tell you with any truth, but my perception would be that their brains are probably processing at 800 to 1,000 words, whereas the rest of us are processing 6 to 8, because they're listening to music, they're texting while they're doing their homework. I've caught Ada doing that, and the bottom line is she's getting A's. So
Wow.
how do you argue with them about that? So the communication for that younger generation is different.
It's
And
evolving.
it is evolving in a way that precludes us. It's great for them, but not the rest
Yes.
of the world. And I
That's
also
I,
believe,
so true.
I think
That's a
that's
very
great.
interesting. I think that's a very interesting point for me because, I'm trying to go and do these videos for YouTube, and I've got these two, extremes on, older people over 50 and younger people.
I
And
totally
I'm
agree with
looking,
that.
I'm looking at that myself because unlike Vicky, I can sit at Thanksgiving and have a conversation with someone and hear three different conversations that's going on. I can be sitting talking to Hartmut or somebody and listening to Viggy do a spiritual channeling on the sofa with 8 other people, and catch everything. Vicky has to have one conversation, and when multiple conversations are happening in the room, it's very hard on her. And I watch the two different listening styles and I think, that's very interesting. I can pick up those others, but I realize I am missing part of the conversation. I'm missing the emotional undertones and I'm missing the body language. I can hear the words, as you're correct, so I can catch the gist of the conversation, but I am not really listening. And that again goes to hearing more words than being able to speak.
Exactly. Ladies, this has been a really thought provoking conversation. I appreciate all of your input and everything that you've had to say. And next week, we'll be wrapping up the active listening sessions or series. And we'll be talking about those compelling questions, those curiosity questions to engage you directly in the conversation as opposed to having to listen. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for allowing me to say this, because I think the conversation we're having right now is so important. And I believe that there is a evolving way of communicating from our generation to, say, Ada's generation, that right there. Ada believes that it's possible for her to listen and do at the same time. They're taught in the school from this side, and they've been practicing all these years to multitask. We believe we can't. And thus, we believe that you can only do one thing at a time really well. And only through this conversation, Karen, have I began to challenge whether this is true. I think this can be true and this can be true based on how we were trained and what we were taught to believe we can do. And it's that generational difference where I know for myself that I've watched um, Robin's son multitask all at once, speed through things, get it right. It's like what you said was so important. The bottom line is she's getting A's.
Yeah.
So they have a skill set we don't. And maybe the thing about talking about that is, yes, they can hear you. Maybe they don't get everything. Maybe it's in the transition time of doing that and what their brain is. Or maybe it's discombobulating their brain completely. We don't know yet. But
No.
I just wanted to say that because they believe they can. They've been
Mhm.
told they can, they believe they can. We've been told, "No, you can't. You have to concentrate on one thing at a time," which is
Mhm.
what I'm good at.
Yep. I'm with you.
Well, I
With
just
you.
wanted to say thank you because I wanted to share that, that's all.
No, thank you. Well, and thanks to both of you. Really, the conversation's really powerful thanks to the two of you.
Mm.
So we will get together next Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern Time, wrap up the listening series just before the holidays. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you being here. Mwah.
Thank you, Karen.